Well, good morning. We've been rushing around here a little bit. Our moderator, Eric, had a little challenge this morning, but I'm glad you made it, Eric. But Kelly, from the college here, was willing to fill in. So Kelly, thank you. We always like to have a moderator connected with the community who generally has high respect, and these two people will have that. To accomplish what you want to accomplish here today, and I want to accomplish in having this coffee town hall setting, and try to get through the number of questions that have been put here on Eric's desk at this point in time, and he'll be asking those questions. If there are clarifications needed for the questions, as is our pattern, we will ask the person who wrote it, if you don't feel apprehensive about doing it, to give us further clarification so we make sure we address the concern that you expressed, or the comment, or the question, or the idea that you had. And anyway, that's basically how it is. So thank you for being here. We continue to do a lot of live town halls and a lot of teletown halls to try to communicate back and forth. And this month of August will give us further opportunity, because we're back in our in-district work period for the month of August, which started last week. Didn't know whether or not the Senate would have something on our desk to deal with this past week, so no town hall was organized for last week, simply because we might still have been in Washington. That's sometimes how the schedule goes. But we figured we'd be out and back for the second week, and here we are. A lot has been put forward in the House of Representatives. In fact, in historic fashion, a lot has been done. In fact, historic numbers of bills have been sent out of the House, many in a bipartisan fashion, like Kate's Law just 2 weeks ago. A number of veterans bills that now have been signed into law that have increased our care for veterans, cut down the time for appeals, made sure that when a veteran calls a suicide hotline, they're not put on hold. And then, probably more importantly than anything else, we've also reformed the way we can, well, I guess for all intents and purposes, the best language to use is to get rid of administrators and top-level VA civil service employees without going through an overly cumbersome process. When you have a civil servant in the Veterans Administration who's counseling veterans and has been caught numerous times while counseling a veteran across the desk, having online pornography site up on his desk, that's just not proper. A person who has been adjudicated to have committed crimes still on staff, that's not the way to do it. So a number of those things have been taken care of, and we continue to work in that area. In the appropriations process, which will be very important, and Eric, I'm giving you time to read those, so we're working on that, but we can bring you up to date on some of the things that have gone on. The appropriations process in the U.S. House and Senate consists of 12 appropriations bills. 4 of those were passed a week and a half ago before the House adjourned for the August in-district period. And those 4 bills dealt with our military defense capabilities, as well as homeland security and immigration issues. Those have gone to the Senate. We trust they will get down to it relatively soon when they get back in September. We have 8 more bills in the 12-bill package that will be coming up for a vote in regular order, with hundreds, literally hundreds of amendments being dealt with on the floor of the House in those 8 bills that deal with all of the other funding areas of our federal government. I sit on the Energy and Commerce Committee, but also sit on, by waiver, the Education and Workforce Committee, in which I've sat for all my time in office, and chair the subcommittee that has responsibility for health, employment, labor, and pensions. And we will be looking at the Higher Education Reauthorization Act. It is ready to begin our debate in committee when we get back as well. So this institution, which we appreciate greatly, allowing us the space to use here today, will be on that agenda, and looking at ways specifically that we can enhance a wider variety of post-secondary educational opportunities, especially in the area of career, technical, vocational development of students. to address needs in the real world right now. Jobs that actually are going wanting for lack of trained people in the various fields. A place like Jackson College has a primacy of opportunity for that and has done that for years and will continue. And with the enhancements, not only policy-wise, but also with the enhancements in dollars that will be sent back as opposed to kept in career training programs in Washington. We believe that we'll have a better delivery of the training that's needed for workers of the real world today. So with that said, Eric, it looks like you're ready. I'll let you step up to the mic and read the question, and we'll see what we do with it.
Absolutely. Well, good morning, folks. Morning. Hope everyone is excited for this opportunity, this town hall for questions to address the Honorable Congressman Tim Walberg. Well, first of all, we wanted to say thank you, Congressman, for the opportunity for the citizens to have a chance to hear words from you. I think it's very, very important for folks in the community to hear what you have to say. Most of you know that the Congressman is a former pastor, and so certainly he is a man that is cares for the people, and so this is an opportunity for him to hear from the people. So with that, this morning will allow him to hear from the people so that he can bear your care to Washington, D.C. Is that all right? Again, I'm Eric Beta. I serve as director at Spring Arbor University and also a community member, so I'm glad to be here at this moment. So this morning, the first question comes from Mary Rose out of Jackson. The question is, what would you do, Congressman, to prevent further climate change? We need leadership to protect our planet.
Okay. I think it's evident in a number of things that we've attempted to do and will continue to push forward. Great Lakes Restoration Initiative is something that we've worked with, this isn't the first year, multiple years, of making sure that funding was there for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. As you know, there was a indication that it would be zeroed out in this coming budget. In a bipartisan fashion, our Michigan delegation led the way. And we have that restored. It's fully funded in the budget. On the issue of promoting all of the above energy plan, especially now that we have the opportunity for clean energy with natural gas and the pipelines that will promote that all across this nation as well as this state. We give an opportunity to reduce climate change threats that are there. Continued efforts to make sure that we keep in touch with the present standards that have gone a long way to make sure that subsidiaries to Lake Erie don't catch on fire, etc. Just the week before I came home here for the August in district, a colleague of mine, Democrat Tim Ryan from Youngstown, Ohio, co-sponsored legislation with me that I authored that takes the Michigan plan, NEEP plan, that has been a voluntary plan that has worked very significantly in the state of Michigan with our agricultural industry to make sure that we reduce the number of nutrients, wastes that go into our streams and rivers and ultimately into the Great Lakes, causing algae blooms that we saw 2 years ago in a very graphic fashion. We're still concerned that this year, before the end of the summer, we may see something like that again. But the meat program that has worked in Michigan has been ramping up with about 10,000 farms that voluntarily got on the program. We offer now to the rest of the nation. I was delighted to have Tim Ryan, who's very concerned in those areas as well, who represents a district in Ohio that sits on the Great Lakes to push that forward as well. So those are just some of the things that we've done and will continue to do to address the issue of climate change.
The next question is dealing with healthcare. From Sylvia out of Jackson. She asked a question. Drug companies are making a fortune on the backs of senior citizens and critically ill patients. So what can you do to lessen this burden on folks?
Well, it's good to see a guy like Strelly convicted. If any of you kept up with that, we had him in front of our committee on oversight government reform when I sat on that committee before moving to energy and commerce. And maybe the best title for him was "What a Jerk." The guy had no conscience. He had the ability to stand or sit before Congress and just totally diss legitimate questions being asked of him as to why he'd taken the EpiPen from tens of dollars to hundreds of dollars, and really was costing people lives, potentially, with those type of things. So those are some of the things that we can do to go after bad actors in the pharmaceutical community. The other issue is dealing with things that add unnecessary costs and burdens to pharmaceuticals to come up with new solutions that frankly are working. And they're working for more than a handful of people. And they could work for a lot more if they were given the opportunity to use them. And yet, the extensive and I think overburdensome Federal Drug Administration regulations that impair the National Institutes of Health and others from doing their job and getting new formularies, pharmaceuticals, approved, with cautions, of course. They won't work for everybody. We know that. But get those to the marketplace and get competition in the marketplace is a huge asset that we need to continue to promote. Also the area of the cost of frivolous lawsuits. When you see the number of frivolous lawsuits that are out there, we all pay for it. And so the industry, both the medical and the pharmaceutical industry, has to lawyer up. And all of that adds costs. And there is no negative impact to a person who brings a frivolous lawsuit. If they win, they win. If they lose, there's no impact on them. That has to change. There has to be, at a point in time, something that resembles a loser pay. We want malpractice to be suable, legitimate malpractice, malfeasance, nonfeasance. We want all of that to be brought before the courts, but frivolous lawsuits just for potential gain of attorneys, probably more so than even their clients, is not the approach that produces a healthcare system or a pharmaceutical system that meets our needs. We know we have the sources available that could be very positive in helping us. We just have to get it to the marketplace. Competition and reduction of unnecessary hurdles are related to it. Thanks for the question.
Well, Congressman, it seems like we have quite a bit of questions on healthcare here. There's sorting
through the case.
sorting through the questions here. Certainly the next question is also dealing with healthcare from Elizabeth. She's out of Chelsea. My sister was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease about 5 years ago. What version of healthcare reform bill would you support to give her a fighting chance?
Well, the bill that I support in the House will give her a much better fighting chance than what we have now. Right now, people have healthcare cards. They have policies, even those that they pay for. But an overwhelming number of people don't have health care because once they go to use it, they find out that the out-of-pocket expenses, $7,000 to $10,000 on average, the prescription drug costs that have escalated exponentially, leave them saying, I have the insurance, but I don't have the care. And these are the majority of letters that we receive and communications and emails we get from people. And as this signs on the other side said, if you don't have health care, it kills. That's absolutely true. So we want a system that's in place. In our case that we passed in the House, 129 pages, still online, you can still read it if you haven't read it already. I've read it several times and sat in 27 and a half hours of debate in the Energy and Commerce Committee, listening to all of the amendments that were offered and debating those amendments for that time period. Having the entire bill read to us by the clerk of that committee at the request of one of my Democrat colleagues. You can read that bill. It gives choice. Even the CBO said it reduced the cost of premiums by 30%. Now that is the opportunity to give health care to people. And you and I can make our own choices and don't have to have a one-size-fits-all plan that covers things that I know I didn't need at my age. And force us into a system where the insurance companies that want to stay in the system, and as you know, United Healthcare, Aetna, and Humana have now announced, every one of those, all three, that they're out of the exchange program by 2018. What they haven't taken out already, everything will be gone. So the largest healthcare providers are going out. We've got to get a track on that. And that's again why we need to move to a choice system that says patient and healthcare provider are the most important priorities in the system. Working together, the two of them, with options to meet the individual needs, medically as well as financially, will make a better system of choice for those people. That's the direction we want to go, and we'll keep battling on it.
Okay, Congressman, we're going to switch over to a different set of questions. Seems that I'm overwhelmed here with healthcare
We're
questions.
going to go back to healthcare, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll give you a few minute break, and then we'll move right back into those questions. But this question is dealing with taxation. This is from Dr. Fred out of Jackson. Can you give specifics about the proposed tax gains? There are three breakdowns, if you will. What reduction will be allowed, if there's any? Is there any online calculation that can be used to estimate one's own taxes? And so if you can maybe speak to that a little bit.
You can go to, I believe it's on our website, a link to the proposed draft proposal that will be coming out of the Ways and Means Committee within the next, in September, with the effort in the House to pass a tax reform proposal that leadership in the House, leadership in the Senate, and the White House have come to an agreement on, which reduces the tax rates from all the way down to the individual. Ultimately, the lowest would be a 15% rate for the majority of individuals filing as an individual or family, and small businesses would be filing at that same tax rate. A significant boon to the employee-employer economy with reductions that will come. We found out over the course of several administrations, Reagan, Clinton, when there was reductions in tax rates, ultimately revenues went up to the federal government. Why? Because people had their own resources to use. The same will take place with this. And so something that Congress didn't do when those tax reform plans were put in, under Reagan and Clinton being two examples, we have to control ourselves in spending, because you can't just take higher revenue in and then spend it all and expect us to be anything less than what the problem we find ourselves now with almost a $20 trillion debt. And you only have to go to my website to see the debt clock to see how quickly it turns. It reminds me of my days when my three kids were teenagers living at home taking showers and seeing my electric meter swing during those times. That's what's happening. Then there was just my problem. The $20 trillion debt is everyone's problem, including kids that haven't been born yet. So the tax reform plan is meant to simplify it. Most people will be able to do their tax reform plan, if it passes as it sits right now, on a 3x5 card. Simplifying the process, allowing your tax attorneys now to, if they choose, to become investment counselors, as opposed to doing a crazy, convoluted tax system. It does away with most of the credits, exemptions, etc., except for a few key ones that the public generally wants. Those will stay in, but the rest is moved down. The top tax rate, as I recollect, will be at 36% for the top wage earners and large corporations that are in this country. So that's the approach. We'll see how it develops. There will be a lot of debate on that on the floor of the House and ultimately on the floor of the Senate. I trust that there will be debate on the floor of the Senate. It won't be just a stonewalling that takes place through a arbitrary filibuster process. It was never intended to be part of the Senate rules, but sadly have taken charge. And we'll see what happens as it develops. But you can go to, you were asked where you can see some of this. You can go to speaker.gov, that website, and I believe we have, I'm looking around for Stephen, I believe we have that on our website, a link to go to the basic plan that will be put out in September. Was that your question?
That was my question, and I looked at that website last night, and it's all generalities. So I asked for specifics.
You'll be getting those as specifics begin to be debated on, again, the generalities of where we're going, the generalities of what produces the support base, and then you fine tune it and put it actually in pen and ink. I'm sure the ways and means legislation they looked at aren't in generalities. But as you understand, the debate takes place and then it rolls out. On the healthcare bill that was passed, you can go online and read the 129-page bill, and it's not generalities. It's actually what we voted on. Same will be the case with the tax reform. Next question.
Thank you, Congressman. The next question is dealing with the conversation of taxation. Obviously, there's been a lot of debate as to how much tax burden the wealthy will take on. And so the next question deals with that topic from Kenya, from the city of Jackson. Why would you support tax reduction for the wealthy?
Well, as I said, there'll be three rates. The extremely wealthy will pay the top rate. In this country, we believe that free enterprise capitalistic system works better than any other system in the world. Basically, there's no debate about that. Just look at our country. Look at the capabilities that we have. Look at what we've been able to produce in just a few short years. When you think of the age of other countries compared to ours, it's been amazing to see what's been accomplished by saying free people with free choices and equal opportunity will generally make good decisions that result in their benefit and their success. And our method has been to say not to put onerous burdens on one set of people as opposed to others, but to try to treat them as equally as possible. In tax structure, flat tax would treat everybody equally. You'd all pay 10%, for instance. That's not what we're looking at here. There will be at least three categories. And the most wealthy, who right now pay the largest percentage of all the tax revenue that comes in to the nation, will still pay the higher rate. The bottom line, we want to encourage people to succeed. And especially want to encourage, which has been discouraged for too long now, people to get into the middle class. That's the genius of our country. The genius of our country is that people like my father could go from abject poverty to the middle class by working and being responsible and take care of his family and give his two twin sons greater opportunity than he had. That's America. And that's what we want to continue doing. Right now, we've seen a frustration that has discouraged the opportunity for the middle class by discouraging employment and employment opportunities, has given more perverse incentives to not work, but to accept support from a government agency. That continuing on over time, it becomes a real problem for the freedom and free enterprise system in this country. So we've seen the impact on the middle class over the last 8 years. It's been tremendously negative. That has to change.
Well, thank you, Congressman. The next question here deals with the habits of our president. This question comes from Anthony out of Jackson.
Who, Andrew?
Anthony out of Jackson, excuse me. The question is, why doesn't the president speak directly to the people instead of tweaking? I'm sorry, I guess the word is tweeting, but I think they've got tweaking here constantly. Please speak to the tweeting habits of our president.
Anthony, do you mind me asking you a question publicly? First of all, I can't give you an answer completely because I've not asked the president that question. But how would he speak directly to the people? What would be your idea of going directly to the people?
Instead of having these, like he just came back from down south, he's going to these different areas, and he had a Saturday morning, 10 to 11 or something like that, for the whole nation, and he could take care of that, speaking to the whole country. And he's got a way of doing it at Quincy Cross, as opposed to just flying into West Virginia or Wisconsin or something like that.
Yeah.
Michigan was good.
say, showing my age,
Press conference.
I remember Reagan. And Reagan, of course, there was no such thing as tweets, internet, web blogs, all of that stuff, social media. So Reagan would go from his office, kind of like the old fireside chats of prior presidents, and the national media would cover that. When's the last time that you remember the national media covering, and this includes Barack Obama and George H.W., covering in totality, other than on a specific date like after the 9/11 experience or the State of the Union address, giving airtime to let them speak to the American people? You'd be hard pressed to find a handful. Across the board, Democrat or Republican president. And that's a problem. The president does speak as a continuation of what's gone on for years. Every Saturday morning, he gives his address to the nation. And you'll hear that on radio, etc. I truly think that Trump, and this is my own personal impression, that he's trying to be Reagan-esque and going directly to people using something that no one can stop, and that's tweets. 25% of those tweets, I guess I second guess on some of the language or attitudes or expressions or blood or whatever else that is in those. About 75% of those are directly talking on policy issues, trying to get the American people to call me, which they do, and tell me, why am I not supporting the president on this issue, or am I supporting the president on this issue, or will I support the president on this issue? So his tweets are meant to do that. His trips, like last week to West Virginia, how many stations covered that? Most all of it. So there was a genius in that, saying, well, most of them won't come to my press conferences except with a canned set of attack questions that we're going to ask whether we've heard it before or not. And so we're not going to get any key information to the people. So I'm going to go, just like Reagan or Clinton, who was also a master at it. I'm going to go directly to the people, and frankly, with 9,000 people showing up, the stations will cover it, and I control the message, like Reagan or Clinton control the message. So I think that's what he's doing. Again, those 25% of the tweets, frankly, I'd like to see him rethink some of those or have a censor on some of those, so I wouldn't have to answer them for the next 2 weeks. But that is who he is. He's not cut out of the same mold as normal politicians. And thankful, at least now he says, I guess I am a politician because I'm in office. Well, join the club, buddy. But frankly, I think he is going to be.
I get the mute button every time he speaks.
That's your choice. And that's a choice that all Americans have. In America, we don't have to agree. But I listened to President Obama on every chance I had the opportunity to know what I was dealing with. And whether I agreed or disagreed with him, he was still the president, elected by the people. And I had to respond accordingly.
And disrespected by the Republicans.
Next question.
Okay, the next question deals with healthcare here. So we're back on the healthcare conversation. This is from Elizabeth out of Chelsea. What is your stance on the proposed budget cut to community health centers?
One thing that we've seen with the federally qualified community healthcare centers is an increase in funding for those centers. You don't have to go to Jackson to ask that, and you'll find out at our center here.
I didn't ask that question. Would you read what I wrote, please?
What is your stance on the proposed budget cuts to community?
Same name, I'm sorry.
Oh.
The other lady.
Okay, thank you. Back to the question.
Did we get that question right? I don't want to waste my time answering a question if it wasn't.
Again, this question is coming from Elizabeth. Was that the right question? Because that's what I read. Right, That's the first question. Thank you. That is the question, sir.
Anyway, as many of you know, and some as evidenced by the ropes in the room disagree, the funding that would have gone to entities that use a major portion, significantly, a major portion of their money and time for providing abortion services.
It's not true. That's
Those
not
dollars
true.
are moved over to the federally qualified.
No federal money for
Please
abortion.
allow the congressman to finish.
He's lying.
The actual fact, going to the president of Planned Parenthood before our committee, was the fact that that is the overwhelming responsibility they take on across the country for abortions.
That is not true.
You'll have to take that up with Cecile Richards because that was her response to our committee.
No, that
And
wasn't.
you can check it. It's their nature. Anyway, those dollars, all of those dollars, will be moved to federally qualified healthcare centers, upping the ability beyond what we already give to federally qualified health centers to care for the cross spectrum of services to women and children especially. And so, bottom line, that's an untruth. The dollars are increased for federally qualified healthcare centers.
It's not true.
These centers are gonna
Next
take.
question.
Sir, questions are, I'm gonna address questions directly from here. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand. The folks who are in the room will provide you with cards that will have questions on it. I'm trying to be fair to those in the audience who have taken the time to have written their questions so that we can get through these in the expeditious
Get as
form.
many as you can.
Next question here coming from Robert out of Jackson. This is a two-question approach here. It says, where do we stand on the Dodd and Franklin bill changes? And then the second part of the question is, do you see so little action on supporting Trump from Congress?
Well, thank you for the question. Another, second would be a misperception. The first, the Dodd-Frank Reform Act, was called the Choice Act. That passed the House. Do any of you remember James Comey being in front of a congressional committee? Do you remember that? Did you hear about it? Did you hear about the Choice Act being passed that same day? No. Yeah, that was frustrating. This is something that was a strong promise made by guys like me, President Trump, to repeal and replace the onerous Dodd-Frank bill that was supposedly sold to get after Wall Street and the big banks. What big banks have gone out of business since the passing of Dodd-Frank?
They were bailed out by the U.S. government. Right.
How many small banks, community banks, credit unions have gone out? So what was supposed to be cared for by Dodd-Frank was just the opposite. Wall Street did well. Big banks expanded and caused a contraction by bringing in small community banks. We passed that Dodd-Frank repeal and replace bill, and that's over the Senate, along with about 200 other bills we passed in the House and sent to the Senate. We'd sure like to see help come from that. On the second question, which was, Eric, supporting Trump. Well, again, in the House, we have significantly supported the president because our agenda was his agenda. That's why, in the first 30 days, the first 100 days in office, he signed more pieces of legislation than any president since Reagan. You didn't hear about that in the free and fair media, did you? He signed those, including 14 regulatory reforms, one of which being my own, which is the 14th, that roll back onerous, unnecessary, hurtful regulations put in place under the cover of darkness in the last 3 months of the past administration. Just move forward without a vote of Congress. All of that has had a tremendous positive impact.
Are you talking about?
We've sent to the Senate, as I mentioned, almost 300 bills and close to 200 still remain in the Senate. So there's the challenge. With Chuck Schumer demanding a 60 vote every time, which again is an abuse. An
No,
abuse of the filibuster process. And frankly, we're calling for the Senate to finally change that. At the very least, to demand that, as was the original filibuster, which wasn't from the beginning of our country, the framers and founders debated filibuster for the Senate and decided not. But eventually it was put in, but you had to stand and speak for 24, 38 hours yourself. You couldn't just make it a paper deal that we're going to require 60 votes and withhold it until we get our agreement. So that's stopping the will of the people, as evidenced in the election process, both in the House elections, Senate elections, and the White House. So hopefully they'll get beyond that, but I can't change that. That's a Senate prerogative. We know that Harry Reid chose at one point in time to end filibuster for confirmations. Did it on his own, called the nuclear option. I applaud him for that, and I wish Mitch McConnell would do the same thing for others. Get it over with. Anyway, if you look at the support of this president of his agenda, the House has been strongly supportive, in majority of Republicans, his party supporting him. In the Senate last week, on the repeal and replace, even the skinny bill, it was 48 Democrats and 3 Republicans that scuttled that for the time being. So those of you that stand with the president in this room have to take a little heart, but the majority of his party are working right alongside of him, and let me tell you as well, he's working alongside of us. Next question.
I know certainly so first of all, thank you, Congressman, for setting up this town hall meeting. I know certainly everyone in the room will not agree with what the Congressman has to say, but we do have cards for those who may have additional questions or maybe disagree with something the Congressman has to say or has said and would like them to clarify. Certainly you can write something down and the folks in the room can bring it up front, and I will make sure I ask the question. To be honest, I am not filtering any of the questions. I am segregating the questions by topic. I've got healthcare, I have different things. I don't work for the Congressman, but I'm trying to be as fair as possible here. So with that, again, if you have any questions or would like to write down additional questions, please raise your hand. There's additional cards in the room, and the folks will bring those up to you. Because it is unfair for the Congressman as he's speaking to be disrupted because it does not give him the opportunity to address the question at hand. So with that, the next question is about healthcare as well. The next person here, Elizabeth out of Chelsea, her question is, how will you be involved in the emerging effort to create a truly bipartisan way of fixing ACA so that those who care or who are mostly vulnerable are able to obtain basic health care?
Glad to answer that, but first I do want to make note, Senator Mike Shirkey is here. Mike, good to see you. You don't have to be here. You could be dealing with, on your own time with your own issues, but I appreciate you being here. President Dan Phelan walked in the room. Thank you. I'm trying to answer questions. I don't necessarily see who walks in, but President Phelan, thank you for allowing us to use this facility. You don't have to, especially if you think I might develop a riot. But as always, Jackson College is a place that impacts this community in extremely positive ways across the spectrum. And so, thank you so much. Healthcare. I am committed to reforming healthcare from what this is. This is an actual schematic that was produced under CBO and other, this one's a small type at the bottom, I can tell the organization. I know Ways and Means Committee and the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee had this put out. This is what it takes to get your health care under the Affordable Care Act. The main person responsible for that is the Secretary of Health and Human Services. At the beginning, it was Secretary Sebelius. Now, of course, it's Secretary Price. If you see where you come in, it's pretty hard to see. Somewhere in this pattern, the sheet that reports directly to the president, IRS is in here, CMS is in here, Independent Patient Advisory Board is here, Congress is over here, and you're somewhere there. That's the problem. And that's why the cost this past year for the average person or family to purchase health care under the Affordable Care Act has gone up 105%. That's why, that's not my numbers, those are CBO numbers, 105%. The average family was told by the president, was told by the,
Are you gonna address that at all?
I will address that.
Folks,
Wasting
please
time.
allow the congressman to finish.
This is a public meeting, and we
I-
can talk.
Sure,
I
that's
do
fine.
understand. I do understand.
Eric, whatever you want to do, it's a public meeting. But I don't have so much time, but you asked a question on what I will do to reform healthcare. I'm telling you what I will do to reform healthcare. I'm giving you the reason why I will continue to work to reform healthcare. I don't want my grandkids to live under that. I don't want to live under that. And Congress does live under Obamacare. And my staff in the room here are under Obamacare. I don't want them to have to put up with that. So if you want my question answered, you're going to get it that way. I'm intense in my desire to get rid of this system. I want to get to this. And so we passed.
That's the question.
Well, we did it. In the House, we did it. 129 pages. Working with the Democrats on the committee, 27 and a half hours of debate, sir. That was historic. No other committee ever in Congress had a 27 and a half hour markup. We were attempting to listen to every bipartisan amendment and every partisan amendment brought up. You know what? A number of Democrat amendments got on. We are now waiting for the Senate to finish their part of the process. Until they do something, we're not intent on doing anything else because we've given them our best offer that worked through weeks and weeks of effort with both parties and amongst our own party to ultimately get to this where you are the most important part of the healthcare equation. Now, I believe we can do that, but we have to have bipartisan support from the other side as well. It can't simply be a resist at all cost movement. And at this point in time, it is. When former Speaker Pelosi, who brought this in, refuses to let her Democrats support an alternative and says so publicly, you've got a problem. You've got a problem. What remains with this is a mean bill. This is hurting people. This is taking them out. If this makes sense to you, it doesn't make sense to most people that are paying the premiums. And that's why we're going to continue working on it. I'm hoping the Senate will send us something. It will then go to conference committee, as is the process. And I've served on conference committees before. And you don't get everything that you want out of your house in a conference committee, but you move something forward. And that's going to be our effort. I've committed myself to being part of the solution, but I've not committed myself to rolling over. Because I represent people that now were told that they could keep their health care if they liked it. Line number one. I represent people who were told that their family insurance policy would go down on average by $2,500. It's gone up now close to $3,000, just shy of $3,000 average cost per family this past year. But we're told that if you liked your doctor, you could keep him or her. That has proved not to be true. That you could stay in your network. That has proved not to be true. Do I have a reason to continue working, sir? Do I have a reason to keep on talking, sir? That's my answer. Let's move on.
Okay, so the next question here is healthcare, and after that we'll segue to another topic. This is from Mary Tecumseh. When 88% of Americans are against Trump care, why do you insist on pursuing this ridiculous agenda? When will you begin to represent the people?
Don't leave angry.
I'm not angry. Not you.
Well, in our system of representation, the election process has its consequences. And I'm thankful I've been given the privilege to represent this district now in my 5th term. Now remember, I represented 1 term. In the 2008 Obama landslide, I was asked to go home. Sent home for 2 years, and some of you in the room were happy about that. The Affordable Care Act was passed. Dodd-Frank was passed. The bailout of the financial industry was passed, etc., etc. And the people brought me back 2 years later and have kept me there since then. With succeeding increase in support. And every year, and that can change, I understand that. Every election cycle, I've told the people exactly where I stood. That I would vote to repeal and replace the first opportunity I had, Obamacare, with a better system. I told people I would vote to repeal and replace Dodd-Frank if given that opportunity. I've done that. And I could go on with those, and so I'm keeping those promises. Some of you don't like that. I understand that. That's the system. Our form of democracy, though it's a Republican form of democracy, constitutional democracy, it's messy. I understand that. That's its beauty. Dictatorships are a lot less messy. But I don't want to live under them. So we're going to continue to do that. But bottom line is, we have to fix this system. We have to move forward. And I've taken enough courses in graduate school on survey research. And in the past many years of my legislative life, I've seen surveys and polls taken. And the polls that are taken, let me finish answering the question and you can respond further. I won't use the old colloquialism. But anyone who wants to get a response that they want from a survey or a poll can do that by the way they ask the questions. But when I go around my district and I go to, as I'll be at Jackson County Fair this week, and Monroe County last week, and Branch County this week, and Runaway County the week before, and other places, and I'm talking with people, the real poll is taken. They may not like what they hear in the media, all of the stuff that's going on around this repeal and replace effort. They may not like what the media tells them about what so-called Trump care is. But when you talk to them about the specifics about what our Affordable Care Act repeal and replace was about, including making sure that pre-existing conditions are actually covered and written into the law, which it is under our plan, they say, yeah, that's what I need. So that's the poll I'm looking for. That was your question?
Yes, first off, I do want to say, I greatly admire you in the way that you handle having town halls. There are many cowards throughout this country that will not face their whole constituency. So I really take great offense when you start imitating the president and talking about fake news. You're wasting my time. You have a style all your own. I wish you would continue to use it. And as far as polls, you can go anywhere you want, and the people who are attracted to you will come up to you and say, oh, part because once it was brought into the light, it was garbage, and it is garbage. And I wanna go back to what this fellow said right here. When are you going to get together and create a plan that will work? We don't need schematics and fake news and.
Okay, let me go on. I don't want to take any more time on that, away from the rest of the questions, but I'm glad you responded. We'll tell you what. When I walk in a fair, I don't get just my supporters coming up to me. I can tell you that. And we're doing all sorts of approaches to get a finger on the pulse. And we're doing all sorts of approaches to educate with what is real and what isn't. And what you're hearing this morning is my normal approach. I've not said that I wouldn't say fake news. I dealt with it. I'm glad we have local news here. It's far different than what you get in Washington. Let's move on.
So the next question here is from John, which is not healthcare related. John out of Jackson said, Dominion overall means nobles oblige. God says for us to stop our global warming. How do you plan to reduce fossil carbon?
We have been given our resources to use. And we are also been given the responsibility to be stewards. I take stewardship very responsibly. Some of you know and some of you don't know because many of you have been at multiple of my town halls. I began my university career majoring in forestry and land management. Not because I hated the resources, not because I just loved to hunt and fish. Forestry and land management involves taking care of the entire creation. And I still contend that that's my responsibility. We're going to keep doing it. But I also understand that those resources are here for our use in a responsible way. And so bottom line, we've got resources unbelievable to use, and capabilities and technologies, whether it be the nuclear power plant over in Monroe County that offers no global warming greenhouse gas effect, which is true. Even EPA says that. Or whether you see the largest coal-fired power plant in the world sitting there on Lake Erie in Monroe County as well, DTE's plant, that allows us to have steel, aluminum, etc. for our vehicles. It allows us to power our homes and our computers and use our Facebook, and allows us to have a better life, living with cleaner air and more power and capabilities. I grew up on the south side of Chicago where you could literally chew the air. We have clean coal technology that now leaves no particulate in the
There's
air.
no such thing.
And I don't intend to poke the bear, but in reality, that's what we have. We have natural gas resources now that are cheap, efficient, and clean. And solar and wind we have as well. And I have solar-powered entities in my district that produce the towers, that produce the transmission housings, and those things are not functioning. But sadly, when I fly up out of the metro and go toward Leamington and Canada where you see those huge wind farms, most cases, and my colleagues all who are flying that plane, Democrat and Republicans would say as well, that half of the time those turbines aren't turning. Now that's a good spot for air. But can they be useful? Sure, solar as well. And where appropriate, they can be used well. And I think we're seeing upgrades in that technology so they're useful for more things. But when I go to the Gerdau steel plant here in Jackson or in Monroe County, and having been a steel worker myself and having chewed the air around a steel mill growing up there, I know for a fact, number one, we don't have that particulate, and secondly, you're not going to start up those plants with wind and solar. It's impossible. So all of the above energy plan is what we want to produce, and I'll continue voting that way to make sure that we have that opportunity.
The cost of the plan.
Okay, well, given the time that we have here, I believe we'll have one or two questions left here. This is from Susan
Sir,
from Mishta.
it was my question.
Excuse me?
It was my question. And CO2, sir, is a pollutant.
It also grows green grass.
Sir.
You don't grow things without CO2.
It is a pollutant, sir. and
Well, we're controlling
we're
it.
doing it.
We're controlling
We
it.
have a responsibility.
You bet we do.
You
You bet we do.
Species are dying.
It's not noblesse oblige. It is not that. But we do have a responsibility. And travel the world as I've traveled to visit my daughter who lives and works in Kampala, Uganda. And there you'll see what happens when you don't use the planet appropriately and think about humans as well as the climate change issues.
They're not.
Let's go on to the next
Question,
question.
the final question here has to do with housing. Mishta is just giving out money for demolitions, not homes rehabilitation for affordable housing options. Why does not Michigan hold Mishta accountable for making more affordable homes by replacing them in Jackson?
Well, I'm gonna leave that to the state legislature
That's what the hardest hit fund, which is the federal program.
to respond to you on that. Our efforts are to get more dollars.
That's with the hardest hit program, which are federal dollars. I don't know if that whole question was read properly or not, or if I didn't include it, but right now, the
Hardest-
federal dollars are being used to demolish vacant homes in Jackson. We've already demolished 700 homes, and they're just vacant. And there's a study just out with SIGTAR that show that our government in the state of Michigan is using the federal funds improperly. So I'm asking you, when is this going to stop?
Well, again, I'll ask you to ask your state legislators when it's gonna stop. They have responsibilities for that, and I'm putting that,
Federal dollars.
the federal dollars, but they're responsible to use them appropriately. Let's take one more question.
Final question here. Terrence out of Jackson, will you publicly support working for, the question here is kind of difficult to read here.
Who is it?
This is from Terrence out
Terrence
of
out of
Jackson. Jackson.
I'm serious.
Okay.
I thought you had one already. Well, then why did I answer your question when you were talking back there?
You did, and thank you for that. And thank you for being here, by the way. Appreciate it. My question is, will you publicly speak out against any attempt by the Trump administration to remove Special Counsel Mueller from the Russia investigation? Will you publicly speak out against that?
That's not the question I was here.
That's not the question, right?
The
No.
question is in there.
Let me ask, let me say, that is the executive branch's responsibility.
Will you publicly speak?
That is a responsibility that is undertaken by them. No, I can't say that. If we find out that Robert Mueller, let me answer the question. If we find that Robert Mueller ultimately goes a purely political direction, because of hiring his attorney staff right now that came from Hillary Clinton's staff. No. These are financial records.
Please allow the council
These
to
are,
address the question.
many of you never forgot about John Engler yet. So, no, and these are financial records that you can see his staff that he's put together of attorneys. We're very concerned because of campaign contributions, etc., that this is going to be a true effort. So the only reason I will not say that is if it is apparent that this has become a political witch hunt, very clearly, I will not stand against that. And if it went the other way, you wouldn't, right? Absolutely. Hey, I thank you for being here. We'll be having more of these, a show coming to a home near you. We've got 4 more this week, and we'll see what happens here. But this is a great country, remember that. This is the best country on the face of the earth. We have warts, it is still the best. If you don't think it is, find me another one. But God bless America. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
snoozing with the same 5 people he always talks to.